Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the GCS Connect Leaders series. We've got Jenny Cox here today with us. She's both a cyber security manager for Tenable, as well as the head of communications for Cyber Women Ireland. So a busy lady, wearing lots of hats. We've had a great conversation, really with regards to, firstly cyber, but also, the way that you can build customer services and best practice, and while continuing to think about diversity. So Jenny's got a lot of interesting stuff to teach us, and I'm really looking forward to, I'm sure you enjoy this conversation. Hi Jenny, how are you?
I'm good, David. How are you?
Good, very well, yes. Nice to see you. Great to have the kind of conversation. So for our listeners, we're speaking to Jenny Cox today. She is both the head of communications for Cyber Women Ireland, and also the security engineering manager for Tenable. So busy lady, and I'm sure we'll kind of go through that in a bit more detail. But great to see you, Jenny. I think our people won't know, but this is our take two, isn't it? We've done this interview before, and it was great. So we've just said if we can't hit the heights on this one, then it will be like the lost recordings of Jenny and David, the director's cut or something like that. So it's great to speak to you again. We spoke at the start of the summer, but obviously now speaking again in October. Lots of things have happened since then. But the thing I always get people to do is just give me a little bit of a flavour about yourself, your roles, and how you've really kind of got involved in obviously particularly the kind of the Cyber Women Ireland, and how you feel that's kind of changing and progressing with what you're doing.
Absolutely. So when it came to, I guess, getting into tech first, I fought it. I fought it hard as a teenager. It wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to do, but it seemed that no matter what I did, I leaned towards it. So I went to work in an admin role in a tech company about 17 years ago, and logging cases into a support queue. I got familiar with those cases, started answering the questions, moved into the support team. Then I got a role there and built up all of my experience and knowledge then through work as such. My actual training when it comes to college and degree work is in theatre studies, radio, drama, and then later in psychology. So it couldn't be more polar opposite to what people would traditionally consider all things tech. I spent 11 years working for that company and eventually became their IT coordinator. So maintaining all of their systems, networks, new starters, servers, patching, upgrades, everything that could fall under the realm of their internal IT systems I looked after. And then I wanted to go into cybersecurity. So I took the leap into a role in Tenable, where I did frontline support. It was a coming down as such with regards roles, but it was a bigger global company and much more opportunity I felt to kind of grow in an area I was interested in doing. So over the 7 years there, then I have moved from support to senior to principal, and then across to being an associate SE, because that was brand new to me, then to an SE, then to a senior, and now an SE leader. And I have 3 teams across the globe that I looked after there. And then during my time with Tenable, I got involved in some
technology. You've ended up being a real specialist, and obviously that, I guess that would mean you really enjoy it and love it. So
I do, and say I fought it only as a teenager, because when I was a teenager, working in tech was just not the done thing for a girl. It was very much something that a guy did, and my 2 brothers both went to work in tech. I'm the only one of the girls. There's 6 of us all together, 4 girls. I'm the only one that went to work into tech. So it was interesting, like I say, to fight it some ways along the way, just because I wanted to be cool, and now I'm on the other end of it and it's still really cool. So clearly I had to break all my own glass ceilings and boundaries in that sense. And then when it came to Cyber Women Ireland, I was doing B-sides with Tenable. We were a man on one of the desks such for the day, meeting various people because we supported every year. In Dublin and then in London, and I met someone from Cyber Women Ireland, and we were talking about returnships for people that come back after extended leave, maybe as carers and such. And one thing led to another, and through her, then I got involved in Cyber Women Ireland, and then this year I was made the head of communications for it. So that is an interesting role. I guess lots of opportunities to speak, which I'm never afraid to do. But more importantly, I get to put women in cyber at the forefront.
And from your so Cyber Women Ireland, is that a kind of global? So is there a Cyber Women UK and a Cyber Women France, US, that sort of thing?
So pretty much every country has their own version of it. There's no like naming convention, or it's not owned by any global authority as such there. What's happened over time, like for example, you'd have a group like WISIS, which is Women in Cyber, and they are global and they have their own groups globally as such within that community there. But Cyber Women Ireland has been started independently about 3 years ago, and we're getting into our official launch within the next few months. We've got partnerships with the Polish cyber women as well, and with some UK groups too, and we welcome those kind of connections between them all. But they're very much, all of those groups would have begun with a handful of women independently setting them up, and then meeting and networking and stretching the groups then from there. It's not too formal, because sometimes what happens with a super formal group like that is you become so aligned to a compliance or a set way of doing things that you lose the nature that you intended as the original group, where it's about networking and community and support and actually getting women into the roles in cyber, as opposed to it being a tick box exercise for any greater community from there. It's much more, we want to keep that consistent approach.
And I'm assuming like you're members maybe of cybersecurity groups as well, right? So more like tech cybersecurity groups. Do you find the where do you find it kind of change? Obviously, it changes it because it's a different type of kind of focus, as it were. But two questions really. Number one, do you think that having a women-only group therefore allows women to put forward ideas and share and communicate better because there's not loud men just talking over them? And secondly, do you think that does it really kind of get into technical chats? Do you kind of sit down and say like, what's the best thing that a CISO can do? Because it doesn't, in the end, you'll do the same type of job, right? It doesn't matter whether you're male or female or what country you're in or whatever. So there's two questions there. Firstly, do you think that helps different type of conversation because it's female only? And secondly, does that conversation happen quite a lot?
So yeah, in both cases, yeah. So when it comes to does it help us being sort of women only, what tends to happen in a group like this is it begins out of a need for that support group. I have often been the only woman on my team. So to have another woman who gets the problems, which are not as bad now as they would have been 15 years ago, but to have another woman understand that, or have another woman have my back, or have another woman hold me up when I'm doing something well. They're the kind of shortfalls we find with women in tech. So we're not very good at telling people, yes, I am good at this, or I did a great job, or accepting the kudos for the work that we have done. But to have that community support us and do that and push us forward when we need that little nudge is really important. But what's also important is to have the male supporters within that community as well. So whilst we are called Cyber Women Ireland, we do welcome the male supporters in there too. And no woman group of any kind, IT and otherwise, can actually make the changes if we don't have male advocates that feel supportive towards it then as well. We can create our own group and our own little inside. Yeah.
And then it becomes a technology.
Exactly. You need to have it there. You need to have it.
Yeah. So obviously one of the key things about your career and that we speak about within the podcast is obviously kind of leadership and moving into, kind of a senior role. And you said that you started as obviously a kind of coordinator really, and kind of have worked your way up in the classic sense. When you've worked through to being a leader in two areas of the business, obviously a leader in both in terms of the cyber women, but also in terms of your organisation as well. What are the kind of challenges that you've encountered as you've been on that, as you've been on that journey, and have they been different within different companies, or was it a kind of a journey that you saw happening? That you really pushed yourself towards getting there?
So a lot of things I've learned about becoming a leader, would I've actually probably learned more about it through mentoring other people who are also becoming leaders, or being mentored by people who have become leaders. And that's helped me learn what's consistent with my journey and theirs, as opposed to me thinking I'm isolated in this approach. But what I've learned is that for most people, when they want to move into leadership, the biggest challenge is that you tend to hit a brick wall. Like people moving into any industry for the first time, they want X number of years of experience before you can go into that role. And I found it, I had proven myself as an individual who would stand out from the team and do things beyond the norm. And then trying to find opportunities to prove that I could also lead, which meant taking on more work beyond the norm then as well, to show I could do that. That's something that it took me a while to kind of figure out how to do that, because when you become a leader as well, it's less common that you are led to become a leader. It's something that people assume that you do naturally, and you just trip into these opportunities and you figure out how to do it as you go on the fly. But mentorship is a massive thing when it comes to that. If you have an opportunity to talk to somebody who is already in a leadership role, or has been in a leadership role, or is open to hiring people in leadership roles, that they can talk to you about how to get into these things, or what the expectation would be on the hiring side of it. I actually studied 2 courses when it came to management, so I could tick that box, even though they're very textbook. Like I studied one with the Open University and my own time, and I studied one with the Institute of Management in Ireland as well, so that I could say I have had management training. Whilst I often find management training by the book is all about how to run an average business and do everything in an average way, when the reality is I want to be an above average leader with an above average team. Most people do want to do that. And how do I succeed beyond knowing how it should be done? When it came to those things, I learned most of that through getting out and meeting other people in the industry, learning what works, but most importantly, investing in the human side of things. All of the technical skills and all of the by the book business, anybody can learn how to do that. But if you can invest your time in your people and how to get the best out of them, and how to have difficult conversations, and how to, empower your people on your team to step forward or do things outside of their comfort zone themselves, that's where the difference really happens. And that kind of training, some of it I would have picked up through studying psychology anyway. And then more recently, I studied design thinking while I was on leave with COVID, not leave, and while I was on lockdown with COVID, I wasn't on leave, but I had time to study.
We're all working,
so I took that then, and absolutely, yeah, leave is the wrong word. But doing those kind of things and applying it to a team, and applying, like, everybody was struggling with the similar challenges, being empathetic, having open conversations, and allowing and enjoying the success of other people in my team. That's what makes a massive difference, I think.
Yeah. And those Open University courses that you did you do those off your own back? Did you think, like, this is something I should do? Or was it suggested, like, by HR, or just one of a mentor or whatever, or provided by your company?
The Management Institute one I did off my own bat. The Open University one, we're lucky enough in Tenable to have a professional development grant that we get every year. So I used mine towards that in the year before I was planning to go for a management role, so I could get that one done there. But that said, the Open University has always been relatively affordable, but more importantly, something that you can squeeze around your regular hours. Like I studied psychology through the Open University, and I did it whilst I was pregnant with my now 15-year-old. And I had him during my time studying that course. So because of the flexibility, and I don't have to do a 9 to 4 college day, I was able to fit in at, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock when I'm awake anyway in the morning, dealing with him to read books and stuff while I'm waiting for him to settle. It sounds kind of dramatic. It was not that. He was great. He was a really great child. I was really lucky. But to be able to do those things and make it.
By 3, I couldn't have done any Open University courses at 2 to 4.
I was very lucky. All the others weren't quite as agreeable.
So obviously, one of the things you do within Cyber Women in Ireland is talk to other women and other people that want to become leaders. What are the key pieces of advice that you give them? What do you sit down and say, right, these are the things you've got to be aware of?
So I would suggest a few things for anyone that wants to go into it. I would say, for starters, get involved in mentorship. Even if you don't think you have something to offer somebody else, which I absolutely didn't think I did the first time I went into mentorship. So I became a mentor and a mentee at the same time, because I figured, well, I can do my sessions with my mentor before I do my sessions with my mentee. So I can figure out how this works as I go, was my logic. But as a result, that my very first mentee that I ever had was a guy, and we still meet on the regular now. He's in a completely different part of the industry that I'm in, which I thought was going to make it much more of a challenge. But it turned out we have a great relationship. He's done lots of things outside of his own comfort zone and developed on the head of conversations that we've had. But more importantly, I've learned, because I'm speaking to somebody on an even level who has no qualms about being honest with me. They're not worried because I'm their boss. They're not worried because they're trying to get a job with me or anything like that. He has no reason to be anything other than honest with me. So if I ask him about, what about trying X, Y, and Z? And he's going, no way would I do that. That's awful because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
It helps me to learn about what approach works from a human perspective then too. So as a result of that, I kept mentoring. I took on more. I have 28 I've done since I started. Some of them are still ongoing, and 23 of those were female. And I've seen, through little changes and little exercise with it, massive changes on my side. And for some of them, anything from job changes to salary increases to promotions, and even a few of them with awards, because of small changes that way. And I've learned how to advise them in doing small changes in a way that feels safe and secure and supported while they do it. And I think good leadership is about making sure that people can take those risks with your support and the security that you have behind them as their leader.
Have you ever had it when I've obviously mentored people and been a mentee? But sometimes when you send a member of your team to someone, say, have a chat to this person, they might be a good mentor for you, help you. And they come back and say, oh, it's a really amazing conversation. They told me so much stuff. And then they regurgitate something that they've been told by this like really wise person. And you're like, I've been telling you that for the last 2 years. You didn't need to learn this from someone else. I've already told you this. Why do you? I think sometimes that person is not objective, not your boss, not someone that you listen to all day. You're used to listening to this person. It's like a different voice telling you something. Sometimes gives you that light bulb moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I find often with women, certainly with me, and I see it among my sisters and my friends as well, is that we'll talk to each other all the time about everything that's going on, whether it's work or home or whatever is on our mind. But we won't always, we need that second opinion when it comes to validating our own decisions on things. And say, that's where the support part can come from. Or like you say, an independent, I have plenty of female friends across the industry that I may give advice to, but I would always suggest, for exactly that reason, talk to somebody else, talk to a mentor who will probably give them the same advice, but for them, it helps to validate. And we'll rarely accept one person's opinion as a validation. It'll always be more than one, because that's just how things work.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's a good leadership tool, isn't it? You want someone to do something, go and get them to speak to someone else, and then they'll tell them the same thing. You're like, they'll come back. And then the other leadership tool I find is say stuff and then leave it, and then 2 weeks later someone will come back and say, I have this great idea. Why don't we do this? And you're like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I like that one. How did you think of that?
It's so true. Yeah, how did that happen?
I've been telling you.
Then you've made it if you can do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do like the idea that you put in people's minds. I read something about Steve Jobs the other day. They were saying, I think they were talking about him developing a new phone and or developing the iPhone. And they kept saying this thing about it was actually them putting into his. They said, I reckon, Steve, if you got onto this phone, then you'd be really, really do it really, really well. So this is obviously managing up, right?
Yeah.
He was like, no, it's a bad idea. We don't make phones. Don't make phones. And then I think someone said, the way we got him to do it was we said, well, what about if you thought about how you could make a phone, Steve? Obviously, we're not going to make a phone because Apple don't make phones. But just if you were to actually consider how we might make a phone, then that would be really interesting for you to kind of get involved. And then he kind of came back and like 2 weeks later, he's like, right, I'm sorry, we're going to make a phone. We've got to do and then obviously the rest is history, as it were. So he obviously did a good job of it. So, for you yourself, thinking about, the world of, like, the actual kind of world you're in, cybersecurity, just as a leader within cybersecurity, what are your particular kind of main priorities for yourself within the technology? Where do you see it going in the next year?
So I think the thing people need to focus on more over the next year is still it's best practices. So there's a lot of shift and moving in the industry, and especially when it comes to things like we had the Log4Shell vulnerability last December, and everyone reacted in panic, as often happens with a big vulnerability like that. Some are prepped and ready to go. Nobody's ever 100% ready for these kind of things. They either don't have the resources, the people. But when it comes to best practices, people have a tendency that when their cybersecurity team is quiet, they think, oh, they're doing nothing, so we'll cut the budget or we'll cut the resources or we'll do something like that. When the reality is that when your cybersecurity team is quiet, it means that they're doing a really, really good job. So those who are quiet and doing a really good job tend to have their best practices in place. And people need to keep referring back to that, and rather than necessarily focusing on volume or what's the fanciest new thing that they can use, they need to always strike at the core for what those best practices are. So there's like key parts like discover, assess, remediate. Discover, assess, prioritize, remediate, and then measure. They're the main keys as such from there. And if you're focusing on all of those things, then you've got that continuous loop of protection. And if you're focusing on all of those things and making sure that the tools you have are enabling you to do all of those well, then you're as best protected as you can be. And just try not to drop the ball on that. Everything else tends to fall into place. And there's no 100% perfect cover, because at the end of the day, you have humans that are using your computers and your services and your OT equipment and all of that. And humans are usually where the fault lands with these kind of things. It can be a misconfiguration on a device, but who makes the misconfiguration? Do you know what I mean? If it's the email that comes in that someone clicks on, it's a person who clicked on it. So back to day one, best practices as always, and everything else then will slot back into place from there.
I've noticed recently, like, within our own system, and we're, really, like, Engage itself as a highly secure business. I think we do a really good job. There's a lot more use of, like, Face ID, in terms of logins and 2FAs, authorizations in different areas. And I think when they started doing that, it seemed to be quite clunky. But it seems to me that the world of cybersecurity is becoming a lot more, if I dare I say, user friendly. Like, they're trying to make it easier for these things to work. Is that something that you guys have been working on to, make it easier?
Yeah. So actually,
secure?
Well, last week I was with Cyber Women Ireland. I was at the Cyber Summit event in Dublin, and I was listening to some of the speakers. I was on one of the panels for it as well. But one of the big discussions that was happening during that was how 2FA is becoming a thing of the past. And you could see the wide eyes across the room going, oh my God, I'm only getting 2FA put into my business. Never mind, have it rolling out already. So there was a lot of talk around biometrics and that being something that people are leaning into more, whether it's thumbprints or retina scanners that you're using. And whilst it is by far safer to do that, because, it is going to be limited to an individual to do, I think that it led into a conversation about concerns over who owns what data and whether people are going to be happy for you to store the biometric data that they have if it's going to be used for work purposes. Whilst we'll freely give it away on our iPhones that we have for personal use, and which neither you nor I know what's necessarily happening with all of the data that's on that. When it comes to our employer, people have some reservations around that. That's a whole other conversation on the legal side of it. But from a technical perspective, it's definitely safer to go down a route like that. You're definitely going to be able to limit that access to the actual individual you intend to limit that access to. And the chances of somebody, having their fingerprint removed shouldn't ever happen. There's always a failover for those kind of things. So I think it's definitely that, and AI, like, there's more of a lean into that kind of technology. We don't move as fast ever as we would like, and certainly never as fast as the people that are targeting our businesses. But it was good to see the conversation open up and people starting to talk about it. And more importantly, those, like I say, who were getting ready to implement 2FA, realizing that they were probably already at least one step behind. And often that's where it begins, understanding how far behind you are on this moving train as such, and how much catch up you have to do. So that helps people to address, certainly at this time of the year anyway, to address, their budgets and their resources and make their plans for next year then too.
And when you go into a business or you talk to a customer, or you're thinking about customers, what are the best advice you give to leaders? Because in the end, it kind of flows down from the top, right? You have to persuade the CEO or C-level suite people to care about this and then therefore implement good things. So what are the best pieces of advice that you can give to people, or what do you try to persuade people of the importance of this?
So whether it's a product or a service that you're selling, and whether it's related to cybersecurity or not, if you're keeping the customer's experience at the core of everything that you do, I think that's more than half of your battle, because a customer who is happy with your service, happy with your individuals, and happy with the product that you're going to sell, and feels like you are actually building it around their needs, is a customer that's going to stay with you. A lot of companies are focused around giving the new and shiny every year and getting the new customers every year, whereas actually much more of their revenue is probably going to be built around retaining the customers that they already have. It's not always the new business. We all want new business, but we also want to keep on board those that we already have. And you'll see, even this morning, actually, I was reading an article, can't remember who it was, but it was about the fact that less and less tech companies are focusing on the actual customer quality side of things and the customer experience side of it. And as a result, it was like a ring chart that was with a line down the middle of it that was saying this many people or this many failed companies are due to them focusing on new additions rather than customer experience, and a little sliver on the end of it being the ones that succeeded because they're focusing on customer experience. And I think it's one thing that everybody can do. Doesn't matter what your qualification is, what your skill background is, what language you speak. You've been a customer of something at some point in your life, and all day long you're a customer of things. So if you can stop for a moment and think, well, if I was using this product or this service, how would I feel about what we're doing right now? And if you can keep that on board, it tends to keep your team on side with you, because the goal is always that of the end user's best experience, and most any team can get behind that. But it also keeps your customers on board then too, and it keeps you honest, for want of a better way of putting it. I mean, I'm a terrible fibber. If I tell you a fib today, I won't remember what it was tomorrow, and I couldn't embellish upon it, and then I won't remember what I was talking about at all. So if I'm consistent in my approach, always being around the customer experience, then I don't ever have to sugarcoat anything or fib about it from there. It'll always be the same story that I'll tell. So I think that's at the core of anything. Like, say, it doesn't matter whether you're making cupcakes or whether you're creating cyber programs, then once you keep that at the core of it, that's where you keep your customers.
And do you think, obviously, I'm sure you agree, but that's one of the reasons why it's important to have diverse teams, right? Because obviously your customers are diverse.
Absolutely. When you have diversity in your team, you're basically making sure that there are no potholes in your story as such. If you've got only one type of people, or traditionally if we've only got middle-aged white men, which is what we've seen a lot on boards and such in the past, then I think that there's a whole mass of businesses and industries out there that we're not we're probably reaching out to them, but we're not tapping into them properly because they can't relate to us. The best example I've seen is I think it may actually have been iPhone's health app. And we've talked about this before, where, it pushed this great app that covered all of your health features, from your blood pressure to your heart rate, all these things. It was one of the first ones out to the market, but it didn't have a period tracker. So 50% of the people that were using that app were missing a fairly significant feature on it. And it's because of the lack of diversity. So that to me speaks volumes. And it's the same, you'll spot it even within your own teams, and, even among your friends or parents outside the school. If there's a lack of diversity within the groups that you're around, then there's a lack of full picture in whatever it is that you're doing. It doesn't have to be limited to work, but we talk about it in relation to, the tech industry all the time. Everybody has a use for tech. Everybody, man, woman, and child, and other, whatever. We all have a reason to use tech. So why aren't we all involved in the creation of those technical items? It's not limited only to the middle-aged white man. Do you know? It's everybody else gets to use them too.
If it
The
was,
funniest part I find is when there's
they'd have a man flu tracker, wouldn't they?
be overloaded. Be overloaded.
You've seen
The
some
funniest
man
one I
flu.
find is when there's technology created specifically for women and it's created by men. They're always the ones that give me a bit of a giggle because you can see where they've missed the point, entirely. And it's just like, it's simple to do. The people that can create your diverse teams or make your teams more diverse are out there and they're looking for positions, but they're choosing the companies that welcome it. And if you go to your LinkedIn, you have a look through your newsfeed, you'll very easily see companies who tick the box and promote themselves as being diverse versus companies who are actually diverse. And June is a great one. If you look at your LinkedIn feed or any other feed around June when we have Pride Month, and you'll see everybody change their logo to have the rainbow logo, but you don't see a lot of activity of actual things happening in that business around Pride celebrations, whether it's, among their teams or something that they're doing externally. And I know when Tenable celebrated Pride here in Dublin, I know lots of people, I put pictures up of the event that we did. We were at the Pride Parade in Dublin. And I got lots of connections from people after that directly and they had said themselves, we've seen the colour flag everywhere, but we haven't seen the companies actually do something beyond create the flag, so that they were excited to see that there was actual, the name was out there, the people were out there, and we were happy to proclaim it. So I didn't even realise until they sent that my newsfeed was reflecting the same. I went back then, I scrolled through my newsfeed and I was like, oh my God, ours was the only pictures I'd seen from companies at the time. Yeah. So, you have to promote that you're interested in diversity as a company and that you're actually doing something about it. And the amount of connections and people that are out there that will welcome come into your team, but they don't want to come just to tick the box for you. They want to be there because they're welcome as part of your team for their talents. The diversity is a second to it.
And one of the things I know you're quite interested in when you work inside Win9 is obviously, leaders and, entrepreneurial and starting businesses, which is obviously another key thing, on top of, entering the industry, dealing with, diversity issues, is actually being, like starting businesses. What sort of kind of conversations do you have, and what mentoring do you give to people that are looking at starting businesses, within that network and within that circle, and what do you think are important things for people to think about when they're going into that world?
So, with regards to business setup, or with regards to recruitment on that side of things?
I think it's everything, isn't it? I mean, when you're looking at scaling up businesses and moving your businesses forward, is think about the whole element, isn't it? And I think at that point you're really kind of setting uncharted territory, aren't you? Because obviously then you're in a competitive environment. So it's great to have mentors and people that can help you. But I know for myself, we've built GCS over a number of years and had many different backers and investors and founders, etc. But there's always comes a point where I was like, no one can really tell me how to do this right. You've got to take these risks and go for it, isn't it? And I think sometimes from talking to people like yourself who consult with people and work with people, it's giving people it's basically giving people the bravery to take those risks, because you have to be successful, don't you? I think.
Absolutely. And I think what I've learned from the mentoring sessions that I've done with people is that in most cases, all they need is permission to do what it is that they want to do.
Right.
A lot of people may have all of the items in front of them and they say, this is the career I want to move into, or this is the business that I want to set up, or this is the thing I want to study, or I want to change everything about my life tomorrow. Whatever it is that they want to do, they know that they want to do it. They feel it in their gut, the direction that they want to go in, but they just need somebody to say, it's okay to do that. Go for it. Take the chance, step out of your comfort zone and take that risk. Because often when all of the decisions land with you as an individual, that's a massive weight. And even if it makes no difference to the person that's mentoring you, having them say it's okay to take that risk or take that chance can help lift some of that weight off you as an individual. And I find that comes up way more often than I had ever anticipated, whether it was somebody who just wanted to ask for a promotion or somebody, like you say, who wanted to go into business by themselves. Generally, I find that people have already made the decision about the thing they're asking you about. They're just looking for the support, or as I put it, the permission to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And for anyone that's going into business by themselves, I can't encourage enough to, if you're afraid of it or you're nervous to do it, take small steps. Like, take the first few steps, and as things grow and you move in that direction, everything else I find would start rolling. I found it when I said I wanted to get involved in all things women in tech, and I wasn't connected to anything. This was back in 2018 or so. And I said, anything that pops up in my email and my news feed, on my social media, anything in relation to it at all, I'll try and get involved, whether it's handing out leaflets or, whatever. And I did. And 9 months later, then I was on the main stage in the convention centre in Dublin talking to 1,200 people about work-life balance for women in tech, because I leaned into all those small changes. It didn't affect, my time with my kids. It didn't affect my work life. I was able to make it all adapt and fit because it was happening at a gradual pace. I took every little small step as it came, and agreed to those things as they came. So taking the first step is the hardest, and everything after that is just going to start to naturally snowball, I think.
Like you said, like take that risk, take that permission, and move it forward. So this is obviously your chance just to talk for those who are listening about Cyber Wear 9. And you said the big launch is coming up. What does that entail? What can people get out of this particular network that they can't get out of any other network, Jenny?
So the plan is that we will launch our calendar for the beginning of the year going into 2023. We might even do that before the end of this year. We're working on it at the moment. So that will give people information around any of the public events that we're organising, any webinars, which includes both technical and personal training. There'll be mentorships. There will be promotions. And what I mean by that is we will have a part of the site dedicated specifically to promoting individual members so that their profile is getting out there as such. We'll have speaking opportunities. One of the things that I've advocated for on the speaking side of it is that we have some experienced speakers, and that when we have speakers going to events, that for anybody who is new to it, who is interested in speaking, that we do a co-speaker clause as such, that we have two people speak, a new and an old, so somebody gets an opportunity to participate in a speaking event with someone who's experienced, and let them get their chance to come out there and do that. It's massive. I know B-Sides in London do something similar where they have a rookie track and then they have an experienced track, and it's good for people to get a feel for something like that, and really hard to get into that kind of speaking stuff otherwise. So that they're the kind of things that we're working with at the moment. We're opening up membership in the next few weeks. At the moment, we're taking queries from people on membership, but the membership will be not limited to just individuals. The plan is to have membership for companies and industries as well, so that they can sign up, and then any of their employees will be able to have membership with us then from there. But the most important part of all of it really is that we'll have solidarity and support, and be part of that team of Cyber Women Ireland as such, where everyone can participate in those events and get together and make that network and, create those connections that will help them forward their careers.
Brilliant, fantastic. And we'll post all the links up when we post up the podcast and the details and stuff. But Jenny, it's been a great conversation today. It was great to see your giraffe behind you. I remember the giraffe from last time we did this conversation.
It's wonky today, I have to
say. I do wish you well with the launch. I'm sure it'll be very, very successful, and we'll hear much more about it in the future. But thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.